that the love is real, that the shoe might fit. She might just be my everything and beyond space and time in the afterlife. Will she have my kids? Will she be my wife? She might just be my everything and beyond.
Kristen Bush said, "I've never seen a hearse with a trailer hitch." Welcome back to another episode of Morning Coffee with your host, Rick Alexander. Intro music by Brittany Taylor. She is Barbell Brittany on Instagram. And we just had a really epic adventure. I don't know if you guys know this, if you follow her, you follow me, but she's been singing the intro songs for Morning Coffee. And we had just met, I guess, one time on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we went camping in Malibu, and then we went up to Las Vegas. And it was a blast. I would say if you have the chance to take a chance, you should. Because I think when it's all over and you look back, those are the times and the memories that you will remember. What I wanted to talk to you today about is how we might live in a way that renders our death bearable. And death is a weird thing for people. I'll be honest with you. My entire life, I've not dealt with death very well. When I've lost people that are close to me, it's hit me really, really fucking hard. And I've not always known where to put that experience and those emotions and how to deal with it. And one of the things that is interesting is this idea that, you know, because our death is so inevitable, why do we spend so much time trying not to think about it? You know, the Tibetan Buddhists have this philosophy where 5 times a day they meditate on their own death. And the idea being that by doing so, you actually end up living more in the moment. You end up appreciating the moments in your life more because you don't forget that this inevitable thing is coming. And so what I'd done is I wrote an article called "How Might We Live in a Way That Renders Our Death Bearable?" And so probably I'll cite that as I go through this whole entire thing. But you know, I downloaded this app called We Croak, and it's super interesting because that's what it does. It reminds you 5 times a day that you're going to die. It just says, I think it was like 99 cents or something on the App Store. Basically, it pops up and it says, don't forget, you're going to die. And people think that's morbid. And I can understand that, but I think it gets you to a different place. You know, there's difference between intelligence and intellect and wisdom. And so, you know, intelligence is this idea that when you're diagnosed with cancer, you know exactly what your body's going through. You know why your memory-mediated T cells are fighting. You know why your white blood cell count goes up, and you understand physiologically what's happening with your body. That's intelligence. Wisdom is when you're diagnosed with cancer and you then realize everything in your life that actually matters and what doesn't, right? And you start living out the rest of your life in a way. And that's why I think a lot of people, and I can't speak to this, I've not been diagnosed with cancer, thank God, but I think that when I talk to people that have, they always seem to live a different life. They seem to live, a lot of people cite it as the most important thing. I know Lance Armstrong in his book cited it as the most important thing that had ever happened to him because you gain this appreciation for life. And it's so hard to do without being told you're going to die. And so I think this idea that instead of avoiding it, it's something we should spend a little bit more time thinking about because it will help us hopefully kind of foster some of those feelings and live more while we're alive. And, you know, hopefully so that we don't have to get a death sentence. But the fact that everything we are and have will face erosion doesn't necessarily have to be completely fear-inducing. You know, there lies a certain freedom in the impermanence of it all. Because the beginning and the end is known, we have like a great deal of mobility to move left and right in the meantime. And that's the part that I like. We live in this galaxy of impermanence. Everything around us will decay, right? And so knowing that, it sort of frees us up to live a little bit differently in the moment. Because then the question isn't about whether or not we're going to die. The question then becomes, how might we live so fully alive that our inevitable death is actually rendered bearable? How might we make it so that our days are now so full of life that by the time death touches our broad shoulders with its brittle hands, we have an eternal smile knowing that the world is unequivocally and unarguably better for having had us in it. And I think that's what we all want. I think we all want to know that we didn't just like leave our mark, but we did so on our terms, that our presence was felt. And think about that as opposed to the heavy hand of death that grips and jars most of us towards the end of our days. Instead of a march toward the slaughter, like, can we run, swim, jump, lift, climb, dance, wave our hands defiantly? Might our lives be a point of beauty that exists in rhythmic harmony with the surrounding world? And might we recognize that the beauty is exemplified due to its impermanence? Lastly, might we live in a way, or love in a way, that transcends the impermanence of it all? Because I think that's the reason that we are so attracted to things like love, because they hint at the eternal, right? And because we're struck with the impermanence of it all. It's like this idea that every love story eventually becomes a tragedy if you wait long enough. And so what do you do in the face of that knowledge? I would personally say you have to love harder. You have to try harder. You have to hold on tighter. Because after all, that's what we all want. We want to impact the world around us and society that we've manufactured in like some meaningful and lasting way. And I think that's why the last thing we do on this earth is etch our names in stone. It's like a final plea for permanence. So could it be that our plea is maybe misplaced by doing that? Despite our intuition, we kick and claw to make this life worth it by material alone. And although that grasping leaves our hands empty in this life, we do the same in death. That's why I think we do the headstone. And even the headstones that we pay our last pennies for eventually join the dust around them. What's more is that it's not simply enough for most of us to be perceived as having mattered, but to actually feel in our hearts and our minds like we are making a measurable difference. A void that can only be filled by the way that you lived. There's no amount of etching your name in stone or putting your name on the side of a building or any other sort of material way that's going to make us feel like we actually lived. So in a lot of ways, the facade of achievement without substantial truth behind it leaves us feeling more empty than had we never done anything at all. It's as if our soul has a deep-seated desire to feel significant in a tangible way, and that can only be attained through intangible matters. And I know these are super difficult concepts to wrap my head around or wrap your head around, so I'm trying my best to kind of explain them in a way that makes sense, in a way that might make you think about the end a little bit differently. Because when we give off the feeling of significance without actually having had it, such as the way that most of us appear on social media, and I know I did a whole show about that yesterday, but the accompanying emptiness can be pretty depressing. In many cases, our temporary spike in dopamine from a flood of likes leaves us just as quickly as it came. And it's as if, despite the affirmation, we still have a desire to feel alive in the physical world, the one we were born and bred of, and that's where you make your money, I think, in this argument. I think that, yesterday I talked about this idea that, are you actually enjoying your life? Or do you enjoy your life, or are you just acting like you enjoy your life? And I think if you actually enjoy your life, I think that's where real fulfillment comes from. But I think, in short, we just want to feel on some level that what we did with our time on this blue rock made some semblance of a difference to the others that are doing the same thing. That our vibration wasn't just lost in the ether, but instead echoed through the eons. And that's an overwhelming thought, because how do you leave your mark on something so vast in a way that anyone will see or notice? And how do you do so when you have to pay bills, run errands, keep up with endless mundane responsibilities? How do you throw a rock into the ocean and try to compete with the waves? But I don't think you do. I think you figure out how to be fully present and relish the opportunity to be standing by the magnificence of the ocean at all. I think that's really all we have. You have to take a step back and appreciate your own life, because if you ever hope to impact another's, you will only do so when you've appreciated the one that you have. So much of what we do is on cruise control. It's not a wonder we finally look up and ask ourselves where all the time went once we reach the end of the highway. There are activities which we engage in life that hint at eternity. That's what I talked about. I talked about falling in love, and I talked about endurance. I talked about these things that, despite all of the limits we're given in the physical world, we still want to push up against them. And I think that's why. I think that there are lessons you can only learn by trying to defy the inevitable. So maybe instead of avoiding those moments, those are the times we should take stock. We should pause and relish the discomfort, because it's more than just discomfort. It's an indication that we're still alive, and so for now, we're still in the fight. There's a moment when your body reacts to immersion in cold water, and your senses kind of come alive in an effort to cope. Every cell in your body that was dormant, maybe for years, suddenly buzzing with vitality. Breath that you once took for granted is now choppy and shallow. Your lungs tear at the seams for more oxygen. A heart that once beat autonomously becomes elevated as it begins to shunt blood to your extremities in an effort to keep your core temperature warm. You'll adjust and feel warmer after a minute or two, but that's only if the water is still and you don't move around too much. The second you shift your leg or move your arms, the thermal pockets against your skin will become disrupted and you'll feel the cold once again, clashing with the homeostatic temperature of your body. You might curse out loud, you might kick and fight to get out of the water, but one thing you will know in that moment is that you are indisputably alive. So just because every minute brings us closer to the end doesn't mean that every breath isn't an opportunity for a moment to be savored in the meantime. Time passes, but moments are etched into our soul in a significant way, and we need to stop avoiding those ways. It's something I think about when I'm going to public speak and my heart starts racing and I start wondering like, oh fuck, I don't want to do this, I'm nervous, I'm scared. But then I stop and I think, but holy shit, the fact that I'm nervous and I'm scared and that my heart is beating is an indication that I'm still alive and I'm still in the fight for now. So the way that we carry ourselves, the things we give our time and attention to, the way we live, it's going to say one of two things about our time here. We either happen to life or it happened to us. You will have spent your time on offense or defense. If you keep avoiding all of these sort of moments of discomfort, like I said, I think you're sort of spending your time on defense. But if you can sort of go toward these moments, I think you stand a chance at doing the whole thing right. Because at the end of the day, that's basically what I want for you. It's why I created Morning Coffee. To fight every day so that when it's over, your legacy is one of advancement and defiance. My hope is that whatever it is that you want in this life, you find it. And that your passion for that thing burns so deeply that you're willing to die for its attainment. Because passion that deep is the only thing with the power to make forward progress despite a known ending in the least bit worth it. And I think I'm going to end with the final paragraph of this article because I think it summed it up well, and I'd probably screw it up if I just tried to make it up. But they should say about you that regardless of the setbacks and the obstacles, you kept progressing. That you stood while others knelt and set sail while others clung to the safety of the shore. That you were love amidst heartbreak, light amidst the dark, and music amidst silence. And despite the limited number of your days, you lived a dozen lifetimes with the one you were given. That you didn't shy away from activities, conversations, and moments of discomfort because everything you did was a celebratory act of that very moment. And I think that's how you live in a way that renders your death bearable. I don't know. That's the working theory anyway. I'll see you guys tomorrow on Morning Coffee.